Some people don't celebrate Christmas, and it's not because they are cold, broken, or incapable of joy. It's because something inside them doesn't resonate. Christmas is one of the most powerful symbols humanity has ever created. Even those who don't believe in it know exactly what it represents. Light in the darkness, warmth, renewal, togetherness, hope. These images are so deeply ingrained that they feel almost instinctive, as if we were born already knowing what Christmas is supposed to mean. Carl Jung would say this is no coincidence. He believed that certain symbols live far deeper than culture or religion. They exist in what he called the collective unconscious, a shared psychological memory carried by humanity itself. Archetypes that repeat across time, across civilizations, across minds. Christmas, whether religious or not, became one of those archetypes. And yet, here is the paradox. If this symbol is so universal, so emotionally charged, why does it leave some people untouched? Why does it inspire warmth in some and emptiness in others? This is where most explanations fail. Society often assumes that not celebrating Christmas means bitterness, isolation, or lack of sensitivity. But psychology tells a very different story, a quieter one, a deeper one. Jung understood that symbols don't work equally on everyone. A symbol only comes alive when it finds a mirror inside the psyche, when it resonates with something already present within the individual. And when that mirror doesn't exist, the symbol remains external, decorative, hollow. It's like watching a film everyone loves and feeling absolutely nothing. The images are there, the story is clear, the emotion simply doesn't arrive. For some people, Christmas is exactly that, a sequence of familiar images that never connect with their inner world. Lights without warmth, rituals without meaning, a collective story that doesn't reflect their personal one. And this disconnection is not a flaw, it's a signal. Because when a symbol fails to resonate, it forces a question most people never stop to ask. A question that feels uncomfortable, especially during a season that demands happiness. What happens when the collective story doesn't match your inner truth? This is where the psychological tension begins. And this tension is far more common than most people are willing to admit, because Christmas doesn't only bring light, it also reveals fractures. And the moment a symbol stops comforting and starts feeling heavy, something important is happening beneath the surface. Something that has nothing to do with celebration and everything to do with identity. And this is only the first layer, because once we move past the symbol itself, we encounter something far more intimate. A silent conflict that intensifies precisely during this season. A conflict between who you show to the world and who you really are. And that's where the real discomfort begins. Even people who don't celebrate Christmas still feel its presence. They hear it in the music playing everywhere. They see it in the lights, the colors, the rituals repeated year after year. They feel it in the sudden shift of atmosphere, as if time itself slows down and expects something from them. This is the power of an archetype. Jung described archetypes as ancient psychological patterns that exist before words, before logic, before personal choice. They are not learned. They are remembered, activated, felt. They move through myths, religions, and traditions, reshaping themselves across history, but always carrying the same emotional core. Christmas absorbed many of these ancient meanings long before it became what we recognize today. The rebirth of light after darkness. The return of warmth during the coldest time of the year. The promise that something new can emerge from what seems empty or exhausted. These themes existed long before Christianity. They appeared in solstice rituals, fertility myths, solar deities, and stories of renewal across cultures. Christmas simply became the modern container for something far older. And that's why it reaches so many people, even unconsciously. But archetypes don't operate like commands. They don't force emotion. They invite resonance. And resonance depends on what lives inside the psyche of each individual. When an archetype meets a compatible inner landscape, it awakens emotion, comfort, meaning, belonging. But when it meets an inner world shaped by different experiences, the result can be neutrality, or resistance, or even discomfort. This is where many misunderstandings begin. Because society assumes that universal symbols must produce universal reactions. But Jung knew that this was never true. The psyche is not standardized. It is shaped by personal history, emotional memory, and internal narratives that often remain invisible to others. So when someone feels nothing during Christmas, it doesn't mean the archetype is weak. It means the inner structure required to receive it is different. Sometimes the symbol doesn't awaken warmth because warmth was never associated with it in the first place. Sometimes the promise of renewal feels abstract when the inner world is still processing unresolved tension. Sometimes the light feels distant because the psyche is focused on survival, not celebration. And sometimes the symbol simply doesn't belong to the person's internal mythology. This is something Jung emphasized repeatedly. Each individual carries a unique symbolic language, a personal constellation of meanings that may align with collective rituals or may diverge from them entirely. When there is alignment, celebration feels natural. When there isn't, participation feels performative. And that is the moment where discomfort quietly enters. Because when an archetype doesn't resonate, the individual is forced into a silent dilemma. Either they pretend to feel what is expected, or they risk standing outside the collective narrative. Most people choose the first option, some choose the second, and those who choose distance often don't know exactly why. They just feel that something doesn't fit, that something feels off, that participating would require them to play a role that doesn't reflect what's happening inside. This isn't rejection of tradition, it's misalignment between the inner and the outer world. And when that misalignment grows stronger, it begins to expose a deeper psychological tension, one that Jung considered central to human suffering. The tension between the mask we wear and the self we hide beneath it. And during Christmas, that tension becomes almost impossible to ignore. Jung believed that every human being lives behind a mask. He called it the persona. The persona is the version of you that knows how to function in the world, the polite one, the agreeable one, the one who knows when to smile, when to speak, when to stay quiet. It's not fake, it's necessary. Without it, social life would be impossible. But the problem begins when the persona becomes heavier than the self. And Christmas is one of the moments when this weight becomes unbearable. Because Christmas doesn't just invite celebration, it demands it. There is an unspoken rule during this time of year. You're expected to be happy, to be grateful, to be present, to participate, to smile, even if your inner world feels nothing like that. And so the persona goes into overdrive. People hug when they don't want to. They laugh when they feel tired. They sit at tables while feeling emotionally distant from everyone around them. From the outside, everything looks fine. Inside, something fractures. Jung warned that the greater the distance between the persona and the self, the greater the psychological suffering. And during Christmas, that distance becomes painfully visible for some people. Because the self doesn't follow social calendars, it doesn't synchronize with holidays, it doesn't appear on command. The self holds your real emotions, your limits, your grief, your exhaustion, your silence. And when the self is not aligned with the festive atmosphere, forcing celebration feels like betrayal. This is why some people feel strangely uncomfortable during Christmas gatherings. They are physically present but psychologically absent. They play their role perfectly yet feel hollow while doing so. And then comes the guilt. Why am I not happy like everyone else? What's wrong with me? Why can't I feel what I'm supposed to feel? This guilt doesn't come from the self. It comes from the persona realizing it can't fully perform. And for some, the solution is withdrawal. Not out of rejection, not out of coldness, but out of self-preservation. Avoiding Christmas becomes a way to reduce inner conflict, a way to stop pretending, a way to protect emotional integrity. Because when participation requires constant performance, absence feels more honest than presence. This doesn't mean these people dislike others. It doesn't mean they lack empathy. It means they are no longer willing to wear a mask that suffocates their inner truth. And the more sensitive a person is to this internal contradiction, the more intense the discomfort becomes, especially during a season that amplifies expectations, emotions, and social pressure all at once. But the conflict doesn't stop there. Because beneath the mask, beneath the exhaustion, beneath the forced smiles, there is something even more powerful shaping the reaction to Christmas. Something older than the persona. Something rooted in memory. Something that awakens without asking permission. emotional memory. And once it is activated, everything changes. When people think about Christmas, they often think about memories: childhood, laughter, family gatherings, familiar smells, repeated rituals. But not all memories are warm. Jung believed that the human psyche is organized around what he called emotional complexes. These are clusters of memory, emotion, and meaning formed through lived experience. They don't disappear with time. They stay dormant, waiting, and when something touches them, they activate instantly. Christmas is one of the strongest activators there is, because it doesn't arrive quietly. It arrives with sound, light, repetition, and expectation. And for some people, this intense symbolic environment presses directly against old emotional material that was never fully resolved. Loss, absence, conflict, loneliness, disappointment. Sometimes the person knows exactly what hurts. A death that always feels closer in December. A family member who is no longer there. A childhood filled with tension instead of warmth. Other times, the reaction is more confusing. The person just feels heavy, irritable, disconnected, resistant. They can't explain why. They only know that something inside them tightens when the year starts to end. Jung would say that reason comes later. The complex reacts first, because emotional memory is not logical. It is embodied. It lives in the nervous system, in the body, in the psyche. And when December arrives, the complex doesn't ask whether the person wants to remember. It simply resurfaces. This is why some people feel an almost automatic urge to withdraw. Not as a decision, but as a response. The psyche recognizes a familiar emotional terrain and prepares itself for impact. And here's the important part. This reaction is not weakness. It is conditioning. If Christmas was once associated with emotional pain, the psyche learns to protect itself. Over time, avoidance becomes a form of emotional regulation, a silent strategy to prevent reactivation. The person may not consciously remember the original experience, but the body remembers. The mood shifts, the resistance appears, the desire to be alone intensifies, and society rarely understands this. From the outside, it looks like indifference, or negativity, or detachment, but internally, it's something very different. It's a protective reflex shaped by lived experience. Jung emphasized that complexes don't define who we are, but they strongly influence how we perceive reality. They color the present with the emotional tone of the past. So when someone says they don't feel like celebrating Christmas, what they might actually be saying is, I don't want to reopen something I'm still carrying. And the more intense the collective celebration becomes, the stronger this internal resistance can feel. Because now the individual isn't only dealing with memory, they are also facing comparison. Everyone else seems happy, everyone else seems connected, everyone else seems at ease. And suddenly, the pain feels even louder. This is the moment when personal memory collides with social expectation, when inner experience clashes with outer performance. And when that happens, the psyche searches for distance. But memory is only one part of the equation, because even those without painful personal memories can feel overwhelmed during this time. There is another force at work, one that comes not from the past, but from the collective itself, the pressure to belong. And that pressure quietly reshapes how people experience Christmas in ways they rarely question. When December arrives, the world changes its rhythm. Streets glow, stores transform, conversations shift, expectations rise. It's as if society enters a collective agreement, a silent contract that says everyone should be celebrating. Everyone should be happy, everyone should participate. Jung understood how powerful collective narratives can be. He believed that societies create psychological currents so strong that individuals often follow them without realizing it, not because they want to, but because resistance feels isolating. Christmas is one of the strongest of these currents. It doesn't just suggest joy, it prescribes it. Be grateful, be present, be generous, be connected. And if you're not, then something feels wrong, not with the season, but with you. This is where comparison quietly begins to erode the psyche. The individual looks around and sees images of harmony everywhere. Smiling families, perfect dinners, emotional warmth on display. And even if they know these images are curated, the emotional impact remains. Why don't I feel this? Why does everyone else seem fine? Why am I out of sync? Jung warned that when the pressure of the collective becomes too intense, the individual psyche begins to retreat, not out of hatred, but out of self-defense. Withdrawal becomes a way to reduce overload. For many people, Christmas becomes a mirror reflecting everything that feels misaligned in their lives. Relationships that failed, goals that weren't reached, financial strain, emotional exhaustion, loneliness that feels sharper when everyone else seems surrounded. The celebration amplifies contrast, and the more the contrast grows, the heavier participation feels. This is why some people avoid gatherings, conversations, and rituals during this time. Not because they dislike people, but because every interaction feels like a performance measured against an impossible standard. There's also another layer rarely discussed. Christmas exposes vulnerability. It invites questions people aren't ready to answer. About family, about love, about success, about happiness. Questions that sound harmless but land deeply when someone is already struggling. So avoidance becomes a boundary, a way to escape the unspoken expectation of explaining oneself. A way to step outside a story that doesn't fit. A way to protect emotional energy when it's already stretched thin. But beneath all of this, beneath memory, pressure, and comparison, something even more subtle begins to move. Because when the external world becomes excessively bright, it casts longer internal shadows. And Jung believed that this is no accident. He taught that light does not eliminate darkness, it reveals it. And during Christmas, when everything insists on brightness, joy, and perfection, the shadow doesn't disappear. It awakens. Christmas speaks the language of light. Lights on the streets, lights in the windows, lights on trees, tables, advertisements, screens, everywhere, brightness. And Jung would say that wherever light intensifies, shadow inevitably follows. The shadow, in Jungian psychology, is not evil. It is not moral failure. It is the part of the psyche that remains unseen. The emotions, impulses, and truths that don't fit social expectations. The aspects of ourselves we hide, not because they are wrong, but because they are inconvenient. Sadness, envy, resentment, loneliness, grief, emptiness. These emotions exist all year long, but most of the time they remain quiet, tucked away beneath routine and distraction. Christmas disrupts that balance, because Christmas doesn't allow emotional neutrality. It demands joy, it demands warmth, it demands connection. And when someone cannot meet that demand, the shadow steps forward. Suddenly, feelings that were manageable become louder. The contrast between inner reality and external performance becomes impossible to ignore. The individual becomes acutely aware of what is missing in their life. A family that isn't close, a relationship that ended, a life that didn't unfold as imagined, a sense of belonging that never fully formed. While others celebrate, the shadow asks uncomfortable questions. What have you lost? What are you grieving? What part of you feels unseen? And the problem is not the shadow itself. The problem is that society offers no space for it. There is no room for sadness at the Christmas table, no language for grief in the middle of gift exchanges, no permission to speak about emptiness while everyone else performs happiness. So the shadow has nowhere to go. And when the shadow is ignored, it doesn't disappear. It intensifies. It expresses itself through discomfort, withdrawal, irritation, or emotional numbness. This is why some people feel overwhelmed during Christmas without understanding why. The psyche is being flooded with light while carrying unresolved darkness. Jung believed that psychological health requires dialogue with the shadow, not repression, not denial, integration. But Christmas rituals rarely allow integration. They allow only celebration. So for some individuals, distance becomes the only available option, not because they reject joy, but because they refuse to fake it. Avoiding Christmas gatherings becomes a way to honor what is actually happening inside, a way to avoid betraying the self by performing emotions that don't exist. This choice is often misunderstood. From the outside, it looks like negativity. From the inside, it feels like honesty, and honesty with the self is never comfortable. but it is necessary. Because when someone chooses not to celebrate, they may be responding to something deeper than memory or pressure. They may be listening to a quiet inner voice asking for something different, not noise, not lights, not performance, but meaning. And this is where the conversation shifts, because once the shadow has spoken, once the masks have cracked, the question becomes unavoidable. If Christmas no longer feels meaningful, where does meaning come from instead? And that question leads us beyond tradition, beyond ritual, and into something far more personal. A search for inner truth. For many people, Christmas is inseparable from spirituality. Birth, faith, sacred meaning, ritual. But Jung understood spirituality in a much broader sense. He believed that the sacred is not confined to tradition. It emerges wherever an individual encounters meaning. And meaning is deeply personal. Not everyone experiences spirituality through celebration. Not everyone connects through collective rituals. For some, spirituality is quiet, internal, solitary. It appears in silence, reflection, nature, or personal symbols that have nothing to do with holidays or ceremonies. This is why not celebrating Christmas is sometimes misunderstood as lack of belief, when in reality, it can be the opposite. Some people don't reject spirituality. They reject imposed forms of it. They sense that the modern version of Christmas has drifted away from inner experience, that it has become more performative than sacred, more external than internal, more about repetition than transformation. Jung believed that every individual must discover their own symbolic language, their own path to meaning. What he called the process of individuation is not only psychological, it is spiritual. It is the slow, often uncomfortable movement toward inner coherence. And coherence does not come from doing what everyone else does. It comes from listening to what the psyche is asking for. For some people, that request is very clear during December. Less noise, less expectation, less performance, more rest, more introspection, more honesty. The end of the year carries a natural psychological weight. It invites review, closure, reckoning. Many people arrive at December emotionally exhausted, carrying unresolved tensions, unmet expectations, and quiet grief. And when energy is low, celebration doesn't emerge naturally. Jung spoke about psychological rhythm, the idea that the psyche has its own cycles that don't always match social calendars. While society accelerates with parties, purchases, and gatherings, some inner worlds are asking for withdrawal, and forcing alignment in those moments only deepens fragmentation. This is why some people feel an almost instinctive need to step back during Christmas, not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of listening. The self is signaling that it needs space, not stimulation. Silence, not spectacle. Truth, not performance. And this moment of withdrawal is not empty. It is preparatory. Because when external rituals lose their meaning, the psyche doesn't abandon spirituality. It redirects it inward. And that redirection leads to the deepest movement Jung ever described, the movement toward becoming who you truly are. Some people don't celebrate Christmas. And now you can see why this sentence was never about coldness. Jung called individuation the most important task of a human life. It is the process of becoming who you truly are, not who the world expects you to be, not the roles you learned to play, not the masks you inherited, but the self that slowly emerges when you stop betraying your inner truth. Individuation is not loud, it is not social, it is not performative, it is quiet, often misunderstood, and sometimes lonely. When the world says celebrate and something inside you says not now, listening to that voice takes courage, because it means choosing authenticity over belonging, truth over approval, inner coherence over external harmony. Not celebrating Christmas for some people is not a rejection of tradition. It is an act of psychological honesty, a refusal to participate in rituals that no longer reflect their inner state. And this choice is rarely comfortable. It invites judgment, misinterpretation, distance. But Jung believed that psychological health is built on alignment between the outer life and the inner world. And whenever that alignment is broken, suffering follows. So when someone chooses distance instead of performance, silence instead of forced joy, solitude instead of emotional dissonance, they are not withdrawing from life. They are moving toward themselves. This is the part most people never see. They see absence, they assume indifference, they label it negativity. But what's actually happening is integration. The self is being respected, the shadow is being acknowledged, the persona is being loosened, and something deeper is taking shape. Individuation doesn't ask whether a tradition is popular, it asks whether it is true for you. And sometimes the most meaningful decision is not to join the celebration, but to honor your own rhythm, your own emotional reality, your own symbolic language. Because not every light heals, not every ritual transforms, and not every celebration belongs to everyone. Some paths are inward, some truths are quiet, and some forms of spirituality don't need witnesses. So when you encounter someone who doesn't celebrate Christmas, remember this. They may not be disconnected. They may be listening more deeply than most, listening to something ancient, something honest, something real. And in doing so, they are walking one of the hardest paths there is, the path of becoming themselves. If this reflection resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel. Here we explore the unseen layers of the mind, the psyche and the truths hidden beneath everyday rituals. And perhaps, the next time December arrives, you'll see silence, distance, and absence not as emptiness, but as signals of a deeper inner journey.